Hello, everyone. Hello, Lynn. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, of course. Women Art Revolution is such an impactful document of not only a national art movement, but also of an international decades-long shift in the way that we look, understand, and produce art. And of course, you being both a participant in the feminist art movement and also the writer and director of this film, I truly appreciate you taking your time to share your expertise and a little bit of your history with us today. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate being asked to come and talk to your students and faculty.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to start asking you questions because I am a very curious person. So just right out the bat, what first inspired you to become an artist?
I didn't have a choice. You know, I was always drawing and writing, even 2 and 3 years old. So uh, I never like said I'm going to do this, and I just did it early on and never stopped.
Wow. And what led you, and at what moment in this very long trajectory of engaging with art did you choose to pursue new developing technologies in art making instead of more traditional media?
Well, one, I live in the Bay Area, and it's ripe with technology and new things being invented. Like in Los Angeles, they say that you breathe scripts, but in San Francisco, you breathe programs and ideas for technology. And if you have an idea for something, it seemed to me you ought to be able to do it. And there are a lot of programmers who are out of work here. And so instead of competing with the history of painting and drawing, which is, hundreds of years of substantial, uh, important work. I wanted to do something that talked to this moment and where I was living, and what the possibilities were for something that was emerging, that hadn't really had a voice before. I
Hmm.
think if I lived in New York, I wouldn't have done this. But the Bay Area, it's so exciting to learn about the technologies that are being developed, and particularly in the 80s and 90s.
Hmm. So that already infuses your work with this level of collaboration and participation because you're also interacting with different circles of expertise as well.
Yes, exactly. And everyone in my family are scientists, and I studied biology and science. So, I never saw the distinctions, the borders,
Hmm.
everything blurred together. If you could, they're all collages. Doesn't matter if you're making sculpture, if you're making or you're using petri dishes. You just have
Hmm.
to have something to say in the appropriate way to say it.
Hmm. No, that sounds fantastic. And I hadn't even considered location as a factor, but as you're saying it, it makes so much sense. And to see how ingrained you were in your context and how you saw the potential for these interdisciplinary collaborations, that's fascinating. Um, Now, focusing more on the documentary, what was your experience narrating and documenting something that was so close to your personal and professional history? How did you manage to both be in and out at the same time to be able to produce a body of work such as Women Art Revolution?
Well, I just started, when I was in Berkeley, the free speech movement was starting, and a lot of various revolutionary ideas about autonomy and individual possibilities. And it occurred to me that I wanted to meet other women artists. So whenever somebody was in town, I would borrow a camera and do a videotape in my living room. And I didn't know how to shoot a video, obviously, from some of the interviews. But I learned, I taught myself and invited them over, and we did that. And I kept doing it because I did it over time. Because I wanted to see the progress. I wanted to show the aging. And then later, when I was teaching, I would talk about these artists, and my students never heard of them. And so I thought, now's the time. I have to make a film because I had 1,500 hours of footage of 65 women, and it had to be historified. And
Mm.
nobody else could have gotten this footage. And I did it purely because, I was interested in meeting people, meeting other women artists, and this is what it turned into.
That's so fantastic to have that element of the social life, but also the professional life and how they intermingle in such a way. And talking about that insane amount of footage that you have, um, I would love to hear about your archival research as well, to access and then digitalize images and video of artworks and also events. Did you face any challenges? Did you encounter any difficulties accessing those works? I know that in the movie we also see that mentioned that the slides became almost this phenomenon that was traveling across the country and the world. So would you mind elaborating on that?
Um, well, the difficulty was, that I never was funded. I'd never gotten a grant, and so I had to do everything on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and but you just figure it out. You break it apart and do it step by step. It's not that anything was difficult, but you just had to concentrate on how you do it, like converting all those slides or getting access to the archive. But I think the women trusted me that I talked to, and they wanted to see this happen. They wanted to have the history shown, and that helped a lot. And people would suggest places I could go to do transfers and so forth. And I think that that's the way it is with any project, and particularly something that isn't mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
that you just have to believe in it enough to find the way to do it.
So there's this grassroots element to also you are accessing these personal archives and also institutional archives at the same time to kind of get all the material that you needed.
Yes.
So that's fantastic, and it already showcases so much of the feminist ethos of kind of subverting hierarchies and producing other structures to be able to produce knowledge. So um, it's really funny to see how you were talking about feminism, but also putting it in practice so completely.
Well, I feel very fortunate to have been able to do this. And also, I wanted to say that the entire uh, archive of the film is at Stanford Special
Mhm.
Collection Library. So if you wanted, for instance, I did 17 hours of Carolee Schneemann, or 20 hours of Judy. You could look at all the interviews, which are transcribed because they're right there and
Wow.
accessible. And that was part of why I let Stanford have them, because they did that. And I wanted everything to be available to the people that wanted to know more. And the
Yes.
hardest part was really editing it, because you have that much footage and that many interesting stories. Is how you really uh, can make it comprehensive. And nobody else could have done it, because the other editors that I tried with
Mhm.
didn't understand what the feminist movement was.
Mhm.
They may have known how to make a film, and maybe a better film than I did, but they needed to know the story, and
Mhm.
so the editing took several years to put it together.
Wow, wow. And it was mostly you who led the effort to put this movie out, so that's very impressive. It's a lot of work.
I didn't do anything else.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
And this element of economics as well, and doing this outside of an institution, so you're not being funded necessarily. So those are a lot of odds stacked against the documentary, which makes it all the more a fascinating document for us to be able to access not only the completed movie, but also all the archive that you produced throughout. That's really fantastic. And it really fulfills the mission of shifting the canon and allowing more people to be visible and to access this material.
Well, it's such important work. And,
Mhm,
the ethos of keeping your sense of humor, but also your drive to do this work and then make it visible in
mhm,
in a culture that was trying to eradicate it and censor it and make it silent, was the challenge. But as I say, with the help of the women and many other people, we finally succeeded.
that's fantastic. Um, Going back to the very early moments of the film, you set out an almost pedagogical objective, and I think this relates a lot to what we were talking about just now, of shedding light onto works that were excluded from the art historical canon. And later, Judy Chicago as well speaks to the remedial education that was taking place in feminist circles. In your experience, has technology supported this pedagogical mission, as well as the expansion of the art historical canon and the inclusion of women in high profile collections in
No,
the US?
no, it hasn't. I think you have to still keep fighting. It's not as difficult, You don't go to a collection and see no women
Mm,
because now people are embarrassed that if they don't put any in, but they don't put enough in and they don't pay
mhm,
enough for the work.
mm,
So, that's something that is the next battle is true equality
mm,
and the work getting the justification and uh, rewards that it deserves.
mhm,
And much of the work changed culture to change the art world. I mean, so many firsts were happening, like performance,
mhm,
specific work, all came out of the feminist movement. Um, that influenced everything else, and also works that were political and talked about the issues of a culture. Um, that nobody else was doing. It was simultaneous to minimal art, where
mhm,
it was just blank canvases. This was the reverse of that.
mhm,
Everything had a story, whether
mhm.
whether people wanted to hear it or not.
Thank you. That's fantastic to hear. And this is my next question is a little bit about your editing process that you already mentioned. So Gloria Steinem said in a screening of Women Art Revolution in 2010 that, quote, if you poured water on each frame, it would become a novel, end quote. Given this extensive archive that you've already mentioned, created from the 60s all the way to the 2000s, in intimate conversations with artists, designers, curators, art critics, historians. How was the process of piecing together this narrative? So we heard about the immensity of the project, um,
Yeah.
but what were your criterias and how did you think about it?
It
In terms
was
of creating it?
excruciating, difficult. As I said, it took years, and I did it myself, and I cut out the parts I found most interesting, and then I tried to put it into some historical and chronological context. Uh,
Mhm,
and it's just really trial and error over and over, and having lots of screenings and getting feedback until uh, we were able to do something cohesive.
mhm. And in retrospect, you were talking before we went live about the need for a new edit of it, potentially, or an update of it.
Well,
Uh,
not a new edit, but
no, be an updated version of it.
yeah, because it's been 10 years, I think, since it's done, and
Exactly.
there's so much more that's happened that
Yeah.
again nobody's covered.
Hmm.
Things like so you're entering collections, you're entering museums, but at what degree uh, and what how can you expand that and have people know even more about people that haven't been recognized right now that should be.
Hmm. Um, Now focusing on kind of your education in your first moment as an artist in California, in Berkeley. I love in the movie that you compare your pre-Berkeley and post-Berkeley image. I think that's fascinating to see a change of attitude, a change in clothing, in the hair. Everything is shifted towards something different. So reflecting on the political climate that we're facing today in campus, university campuses, could you speak to your experience in the Bay Area in the 1960s and 70s as a scholar and also as an artist? What was your experience there?
Well, I came to Berkeley to get my to get my master's degree, but I quit within a week. So I eventually got it, but uh, it was, you know, it was really the time of revolution. It was free speech movement and um, a civil rights movement, and there was so much performing in the streets that you know, it I wanted to be part of that, so I joined all of that, and then you know, I learned, you know, about the performances in the street and how they were structured, and later I went to LA and finally came back to the Bay Area, and as I say, felt that this was important information that people had to see, not just women, but the
Mhm.
whole art community. So
And also, just following that, what do you think artists can learn from grassroots movements?
uh, I think they can learn to trust their own autonomy and their own instincts, and to do what they can to fulfill something that they believe in,
Mhm.
that may not be supported at the time.
That's fantastic.
Uh,
Thank you so much. That's very sound advice. Even for
and
me,
keep your
a
sense of humor.
almost art historian, that's great to hear. Um,
And
and how, go ahead, sorry.
well, also, you know, what I tell people is you have to keep your sense of humor. You can't throw anything away, which, you know, I had all this material, took up closets and under the beds, and it's all over the place.
It's so funny how this movie also took space in your domestic space,
Yeah.
as many of your artwork actually also did, because this is not your only long duration, very intimate piece of work. You have been a trailblazer in the medium of video art since the 1970s. And this is for the audience, just a little introduction of what you've been doing. For example, the Laserdisc installation Lorna, dating from 1979 to 1984, telling the story of a reclusive woman who refuses to leave her apartment, and you allow the visitor to the exhibition or the audience to make choices that affect the narrative. That to me is so fantastic. Would you talk us through this type of interactive video art that you were experimenting with?
Well, I had actually I'd spent some time in the hospital, and I was under an oxygen tent, and I all I could do was hear my own breath
Mhm.
for months. And when I finally got better, I started to do work with sound. They're called breathing machines, and I actually got to show them in a museum. But the exhibition was taken down within 24 hours because, you know, it was the beginning of people saying it wasn't art. Um, and so the uh director, somebody in the museums, wouldn't allow it to happen,
Mhm.
so that caused me to say, well, who needs a museum? And I went and started to do work in hotel rooms and store windows and so forth. But in that case, like if you do something in a hotel room, you have to enter the door and walk up the stairs and get a key and go through it. So it was really an interaction, and I
Mhm.
wanted to think more about the interaction and having an audience be able to choose endings or to choose how to see something and when to see it. And that's why I developed Lorna, um, with Texas Tech, actually,
Mhm.
uh, to see if there could be modular stories within a piece that could be re-edited by the viewer themselves in an interactive way, not knowing, of course, that nobody had ever done that.
it feels like a lot that you do is precisely that, just doing it and not necessarily having to reference anything or borrow anyone's expertise. You're just very much a DIYer. You go and you do the thing. So that's really an amazing attitude to have. You also created your electronic diaries, again, with a running time from 1984 to 2019, which is a very, very impressive time to dedicate to an artwork.
Well, again, I did it to teach myself how to use video, and it's now 1984 to 2024 because I'm doing
Oh,
another
that's fantastic.
section section of it. You know, 6 of them just opened in Germany, but
Wow.
the fall have a new one because one, I never thought I would show it. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it taught me how to use a camera, how to use sound, how to edit. And every summer, you know, I was teaching and I got to use the equipment at the school to shoot it. And then every summer I would edit it. So, I- and then when I finally showed it, I found that the closer I got to my own truth, the more it resonated with people. So
Mhm.
I kept doing it.
Mm.
And you know, you change because culture changes and you get older and you have different perspectives. And it's kind of that summary of living through
Mm.
several decades that seems to have some kind of historical significance for other people.
Of course. And you've done that not only with yourself, with your diaries, but through the movie, you really see the passage of time and people reconsidering ideas that they had previously. And I feel like there's such a potential there to rethink, not have to just have the same opinion forever. And I feel like that's how feminism evolved and continues to change and shift. What differences do you perceive between feminist practices and strategies in art from the period that you were covering in the documentary to now? Are you engaging with feminist and women artists at the moment? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am. I always am trying to meet other young women, and now everybody's younger. So and to find out what they're doing, and uh, it's usually the most interesting work that's being done, and uh, and seeing how it's presented now because it's not as difficult. You know,
Mhm.
now you have female uh, directors of museum and women curators and women critics. There were none in the
Mhm.
60s. In fact, women could rarely even show in a gallery unless they were married to somebody that was showing in that gallery.
Mhm.
So, you know, that kind of restriction and negativity and censorship has been largely overcome, which gives young women more of an opportunity and more of a chance to explore the visions that they have and to find ways to put it into the world,
Mhm.
which it may not have to be museums and galleries. There are many more choices now for connection.
Exactly. And you've been utilizing technology for that as well. You're utilizing the internet, you're utilizing new media to continue to engage artists and also viewers, um, which is really commendable. Do you have any advice for young artists working with new media? You seem to be so um, apt with dealing with change and incorporating new technology throughout your work. You can really see a wide range of media that you were working with. So, do you have any advice for people wanting to get into that field?
I think, you know, the main thing is keep your vision and then find out what the best form to show your work is. You know, does this work want to be a film? Does it want to be a drawing? Does it want to be, you know, a deck of cards? And, you know, and make that decision and then not give up. You know, find a way to do the work and find the way to get it into the culture.
Hmm.
And you know, it's a matter of invention. And as I say, I know many young women now are doing just that and don't have the and have the confidence to do it. They don't feel defeated. and
Yeah.
make, feel that there are chances that didn't exist before now.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That's fantastic to hear. Um, Let me see. Going back to, you said that in LA, you breathe scripts. Um, how is your relationship with Hollywood as a filmmaker? Because you're um, producing films that are very much in the tradition of cinema and also producing video art, which is a very different type of media. What is your relationship with Hollywood, having worked with people such as Tilda Swinton, and also working as a video artist that's producing something very different? I would love to hear how you kind of work through these two universes at once throughout your career.
Well, I don't have any relationship with Hollywood because my films don't make a lot of money. I show them, in when theaters existed, I was showing them in movie theaters, but mainly in museums.
Mhm.
And they were funded, strangely enough. I did a little video, and it was my birthday, and I sent it to some competition in at the south of France, and it won. And it happened that somebody in the audience was a producer for German television. So German television is who funded 6 of my films, which
Oh.
really, taught me how to make uh, uh, long works, uh, and it gave me my first budgets to do it. And
Mhm.
I think, I was at the Berlin Film Festival actually showing the electronic diaries, and I happened to sit next to Tilda Swinton accidentally. And so that's how that happened. And,
Mhm.
we had so much fun making our first film that we just kept going.
Mhm. That's great to hear. And again, the element of sociability, of making connections that are organic
Yeah.
comes up again. And that's a very feminist way of dealing with the movie business. Thank you so much for that. With that, I would like to pass it on to our beautiful viewers, who I'm sure have a lot to talk about and ask you.
Hi, thank you so much, Lynn. This was really amazing. And I'm embarrassed to say this was the first time I've seen the film, and it was utterly mind-blowing to me. And I'm going to use it for teaching in the future. And I think it should be part of every 20th century um, modern and contemporary art class. It's wonderful. It was really comprehensive, but I know that there must have been a lot of things that you couldn't include. So could you talk about some of the things that you wish you were able to include, or also things that you think were missing?
I think the film stands as it is, as kind of a cohesive history of that time. Um, I wish I could have included 1,500 other hours of story, not minutes, hours. And, but that was the deal I made with Stanford. So everything could be seen. And you can look through catalogs of the transcripts of all these women, 65 women that I interviewed over time, and decide if you want to watch it, and they'll put it up for you. So I don't have to make like the complete film because there's a lot of pressure, for just that question, what's the best thing I can show? And it was actually when I made that arrangement with Stanford, where they got a grant, that's Preserving Creative America grant, that allowed them to put the rest of it on, online. That I'd said, well, this is this story, but people can see more because it's there and accessible and available.
That's amazing. It's a wonderful resource for everyone. Thank you.
And I feel like just plugging the exhibition that's connected to this screening, we had 900 objects to choose from, and you had thousands and thousands of hours to choose from. So whenever I'm touring the exhibition, I say, I could have curated this exhibition
Completely different.
10,000 times.
Yeah.
And I feel like now the material's out there for other people to remix and create another movie altogether. So it is fantastic to have that archive on deck and within an institution that is really going to take care of it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Well, just in case there's more questions cooking in the audience, I might ask one just in the time being. As we were walking Letícia up to our offices to jump on the Zoom call, one of the things that she had pointed out about the film that is sort of a recurring structure in the film is the fact that it's really bi-coastal in this way that a lot of documentaries about the art worlds can sort of not be, right? The entire art world becomes Manhattan, or the entire art world becomes one corner of Los Angeles. And the film is so mobile. It's constantly moving between Los Angeles and Fresno and New York and DC and all of these different spaces. And so I wonder if you can just reflect on the significance of capturing the scale and the scope of the work that was going on and moving between different locations, and the difference maybe between capturing a scene and capturing a movement, an art scene versus a political movement. And I wonder if you can reflect on that a bit.
I think that the question is that, it's really related, that, that the art scene was a movement, and it was really in advance of a lot of the movements that were happening in America, but it was, didn't have the amplification that it deserved. So I would, go to where I could, or as I say, most of it was done in my living room, and people had footage that they loaned me of things that were going on. So like, I didn't have the prejudice of saying that only happened in Fresno, or it only happened in LA, but it did, move around from its origins in Fresno to Los Angeles, to New York, to Washington. So I wanted to follow that as it was happening.
Excellent, thank you. And we do have a question on the side.
Hi, Lynn. I'm Amanda. I love the movie. It was so enlightening. But I have a question. I think I missed something about Judy Chicago's dinner party with all the Volvic plates. Why was it overseen by Congress? And why were they able to say no to it?
I think it was going to be shown in Washington, D.C., and somebody came out and said that it was pornography. Okay. And so the funding was coming from Washington, and Congress has something to do with whether or not it should get funded. So that's why that discussion was there. And I think they ended up not giving it the money.
Very nice.
Yeah, I believe it was a discussion with the National Endowment for the Arts.
Oh,
was where the funding was coming from, but I would have to check on that.
Yeah, that's really too bad that they couldn't have the party anyway, because it would have had such big names.
Yeah.
But nobody knew them. They were completely anonymous and unknown, and so was the movement. And of course, you looked at the gender bias of that time, and also of who was making up that group of people who made the decision. There weren't any women in it. So that's what everybody fought through.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, just to wrap up, thank you so much for being here with us. This was a very transformative talk, as your documentary is also very transformative. So thank you for being here with us and sharing this virtual space with us. And just a last plug for the exhibition that is currently in show at the ADNA Museum, A Box of One's Own, Women Beyond Borders, goes up to May 5th. And please visit. I think it's a blast, and it's a really cool document to have as well. A group of artists from all over the world, very much like the ones that Lynn was documenting in her fantastic film.
Oh, so, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And I do thank Oriana for the opportunity, alongside Gabriel Ritter, the director of the museum, for the opportunity. But yeah, with that, I would like to wrap up our conversation. Lynn, have a fantastic rest of your night. And thank you all for being here with us as well.
Great.